Have you signed up for the biggest homebrew event of the year? The AHA National Homebrewers Conference, also known as HomebrewCon, returns to Charm City this June. Join thousands of your closest homebrewing friends in Baltimore for 3 unforgettable days of learning, camaraderie, and delicious brew. Register today at homebrewcon.org. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, March 17th, St. Paddy's Day, 2016. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about homebrewing. This week we celebrate 500 episodes with a retrospective look back over the past decade of Basic Brewing Radio. If you're new to homebrewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through the basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. And don't forget to get a copy of our Brewer's Logbook. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on our Amazon.com associate link and our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us first and click on our associate link on basicbrewing.com. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you the show. Greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes or Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows phone app. We're on the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're on the Stitcher app as well. And if you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support, and thanks to everybody who's done so already. And you will get links to bonus videos from the past, a collection of 3 bonus videos in an email that I will send you afterwards if you contribute. This episode was a doozy to put together. Andy Sparks, Chris Colby, and I are on the road, or I guess in the air maybe, to New Zealand for the first New Zealand National Homebrewers Conference. And while we're on the other side of the globe, I wanted to put together a celebration of our journey over the past 10 years. We hit episode 500 7 episodes ago. This is technically episode 507. And what's tricky about this is that I can only give a taste of the heaps and heaps of content that are in our archives. These are just the highlights. It's just kind of like you went to a record album and took the needle and just did a needle drop across the album. You just get the highlights. There are people, topics, and interviews that I think are important that didn't make the cut. So if your favorite topic, or if your favorite show, or if your favorite person, or if you didn't make the cut, please don't take offense. We love you. We love all the shows, and we love all the information. I just, it was tough. The way I did it, I went through and I looked for episodes where I could find a soundbite that encapsulated, what each of those episodes were, or who the people were, or where we are at that time. And it was tough. For instance, we have a ton of experiments in the archives. We've evaluated a ton of experience over the years. But how do you pick out a 10 to 15 second clip that sums up any of those experiment episodes? It's tough. Anyway, enough of me complaining. With all that said, I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I got a chance to listen to interviews that I hadn't heard in several years. It makes me want to go back to the beginning and binge listen to every show again. So many memories and so much information, and it's all free. We haven't put up a paywall for the archives like other podcasts do, and that's thanks to the support of everybody who has purchased our stuff over the years and continue to do so, and to those who use our associate links on basicbrewing.com, and of course, our advertisers, such as the American Homebrewers Association this week and Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. By the time you're hearing this, if all goes well, if all goes according to plan, Steve Wilkes and I will have shot a video with Desiree and Dave of High Gravity comparing the High Gravity electric brewing bag system that I have, the 240-volt 10-gallon system with the pump, to the smaller 120-volt 5-gallon system with the pump. And at this point, I haven't seen the smaller system in person, and I'm looking forward to that. And I believe that Steve is going to be able to have that one to use, and so you'll be seeing that in use in the future on Basic Brewing Video. Very exciting. In addition to the 120-volt 10-gallon system with a pump and the 240-volt 10-gallon system with a pump, the 120-volt 5-gallon system with a pump, they also have a 120-volt 5-gallon system with no pump in the true tradition of brew in the bag. But I love the way the system works. It's very open and very familiar to me and my brewing style, and I still feel like I'm in complete control. And with the awesome high-gravity electronic controller, I am. So check out the complete line of high-gravity electric brewing systems and controllers at highgravitybrew.com. And for ingredients and many other products, High Gravity offers $7.99 shipping. highgravitybrew.com. And many thanks to Desiree and Dave for the support of this podcast. Okay, time to do a little time warp. You know how it goes. It's just a jump to the left and then a step to the right. But you don't have to do that. You just have to sit back and listen to your headphones. Let's start by going back to July of 2005 in the back of the home brewery shop in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Well, Andy, welcome. Thank you, or maybe I should thank you for welcoming us into your homebrew store today.
Well, you're always welcome here, James.
Well, thank you.
It's great to have you.
As long as I bring my checkbook, right? That's,
exactly. Our favorite customers come with their checkbook.
And if you hear traffic in the background and some birds chirping, it's because we're out on the porch. I'm out on the porch with my friend Steve Wilkes. Thanks for joining me here today, Steve.
Thanks, James. And we've got a couple of great meads to sample today.
That's right. Well, we hope they're great. I made them, so if they're bad, it's my fault.
Oh, I'm sure they're going to be wonderful.
The way, therefore, to get the best hop aroma in your beer, especially if you're going to dry hop with pellets or cone hop, is to bring the hops out of your cold store for 24 hours, let them warm up, and get rid of the undesirable hop oils, which evaporize by warming up. They're very volatile, and therefore you get rid of it if you bring the hops for 24 hours out of cold store.
Really, the first important point to make about how people taste is that we commonly misunderstand what we mean when we use the word taste, because actually taste is just a sensation that arises from stimulating taste buds in the mouth. But whenever we eat a meal or sip a beverage, we're actually stimulating multiple sensory systems at the same time, and all that information comes to the brain at once. So more appropriately, we call that flavor.
But the fact that we use barrels in the wild ales we do, the Temptation, the Supplication, we've got beers aging right now that are old Lafolie barrels from New Belgium. We've got a beer that we're doing using a fruit called a Pluot, which is a cross between a plum and an apricot, another one with Muscat Canali grapes. The Supplication has cherries. We're doing a collaborative beer in a barrel with 21st Amendment Brewery in San Francisco that they make a watermelon beer. And I always joke with Sean, the owner, that, we need to give this beer some funk and a little more personality. So I had him bring up three or four kegs, and we stuck it in a barrel and added a bunch of Brett. And when I get back, we're going to add lactobacillus. And,
well, what the yeast does is the yeast assimilates the sugars in the wort, and as well as the nitrogen compounds and amino acids that are available in the wort as well. Those are all nutrients that the yeast need to survive. So these yeast metabolize the sugars. They take them up through their cell walls. They convert those sugars into essentially alcohol and carbon dioxide and esters and flavor compounds. So for every pound of sugar that a yeast population would take up in the wort, they would produce about a half a pound of carbon dioxide and about a half a pound of alcohol.
I came from Michigan Tech, And up in northern Michigan and northern Minnesota, they drink a lot of what they call Bock beers, but they're actually just dark lagers. And when I moved to Southern California in the late '80s, everything out here was Corona. So I missed dark beer and thought, it can't be that hard to brew myself. So I got started, and my first batch was miserable. It was. Of course, I tried to brew an American light lager to make something that my wife would like drinking too, and it tasted like cidery pond water. It was pretty bad. And what really incensed me was when I took it to the brew shop, and the brew shop owner tasted it, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, this is good beer." I'm like, "No, it's not."
So what are we doing here, Casey? What is the theory of today?
Well, this is what we call a blind mice brew that we're doing, and all four of us today have gotten together, and we have sort of a fourth of the ingredients for a batch of beer, and at this point, nobody really knows what anybody else has brought.
And I forgot what I brought, so it'll be a surprise to me
helps,
too.
Yeah, lots of surprises.
IBUs are international bitterness units. That's what those letters stand for. Sometimes you will see EBUs for European bitterness units. They are the same thing. And quantitatively, they're defined as being parts per million of isomerized alpha acids in beer. And that's the essential measure of IBUs.
So what we're going to do is we're going to make a six-pack.
We're going to make a six-pack.
We're going to make a six-pack of beer today.
12-ounce beers.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're not actually going to bottle them, and we're going to make a six-pack's worth of beer.
Okay, you owe me a Coke.
Now, are there varieties of honey that you don't want to use, or pretty much is it if you like the taste of the honey in its raw form, it's good?
It all depends what you like. You can use any kind of honey with any kind of mead.
So we were brewing. I think it was the Four Blind Mice brew with Casey and Jason, and it kind of came up. Like Casey was a little bit nervous about it. And I said, "Oh, you mean the myth of hot side aeration? Of course, yes. We're all worried about that, aren't we?"
And Casey's a little uptight about the hot side aeration issue.
He uses brewing as a very wonderful way for him to just have a lot of control over the process, and he enjoys it a lot, and more power to him.
They still favor right around where we are, the latitudes up where we're around 45 degrees latitude, because we're right in the middle of that whole range there. And we're not too cold in the winter as you go further up to the 55, or too hot, and like we are where you're down around the 35, because they actually do prefer a winter dormancy, where they actually can die back and rest for the winter, whereas you're not going to see a whole lot of that in southern Florida or southern California, that kind of thing.
It's easier for us when you're Americans and you think in terms of style, to say it's a double, or it's a triple, or it's a strong dark ale. Most of them fit in those categories.
I think for a lot of home brewers, just the real simple thing is if you have a beer, a home brew, a commercial brew, and it has a kind of a dull finish to it, the flavor isn't bright and really out there, it's all kind of dull and muddy, the first thing to look at is your mash pH, because that's such a consequence of a too high a mash pH.
Now this was done in German Pilsner beer, and now is being applied to small scale, not stale. Craft brewers batches. There we go.
Although it could be applied to stale batches as well.
German beer being what it is.
Oh.
Well, it takes a while to get it over here. I mean, I used to think trans 2-nonenal, so that the classic cardboard stale character that was always identified with, when my early beer tasting experience was, hey, that's that German taste. All these German beers have this flavor. And, you go over to Germany and they didn't have that German flavor anymore.
You have to say one word that describes the aroma. None of us have tasted this yet. So, James, one word, for the aroma or the bouquet that you're getting off this hop?
No, sure. Start with me. Okay. I'm going to say floral.
Floral. Show me floral.
Survey says.
Survey says. Andy, your one word?
I don't know. Ripe. It reminds me of. It's almost kind of a sour smell. It's not just the floral. Maybe it's I know everybody describes it as citrusy, but it's more than that.
I was actually going to say orange,
Yeah.
which I think combines all of that sour twang or whatever it is.
So your one word is orange, Michael. Yeah. My one word is watermelon.
I was going to change my answer to melon. I swear to you. I'm not trying to.
Okay, now I'm tasting.
I'm not trying
It's
to.
like a Jolly Rancher.
I was going to say melon.
And, it goes against theory. I have a yeast that I keep going. You guys want to ask me about my yeast earlier. What kind of yeast? I have this, I call it the original culture. If you read in my new book called Microbrewed Adventures, there's a story about the St. Louis experience I had in 1982, where Anheuser-Busch and the Master Brewers Association and the American Society of Brewing Chemists asked me to brew a special batch of beer. And talk about it being intimidated. This was in 82 when the best yeast we could get as home brewers was basically dried yeast, unless you wanted to pay a couple $100 for a yeast slant. And I was intimidated as hell, but I just had a few home brews. I said, I can do it. Just like everything else in my life. It's intimidating to have a few glasses of home brew, and then all of a sudden you can conquer the world.
We are going to try to pick your brains for the home brewers that are listening out there, Peter, and how they can get the most out of this style of beer, the Belgian beers, since you do such a good job. Oh, you made a menacing move. What does that mean?
Do not mention the word style to me.
What do you mean by that?
I don't make styles, I make art. And it's up to you to qualify or classify it, but I'm the artist. I don't want to be talked about styles. So
every other person that I would tell, by the way, I've started this new book and it's about beer, would tell me exactly what you just got done telling me. Just exactly.
Well,
so,
it's good to know it's good to know that my sources weren't wrong.
Yes, the great American myth about the great American beer. Yeah, wrong. You're a nice guy, and I hate to tell you, but you're just wrong.
We always, we look at the pie. We're pretty smart guys. Well, I like to think that we're smart guys, but we look at a pie, and you're looking at American lager or lager styles, representing 90% of sales, or probably a little bit less. Then you've got imports with their 10% market share or so, and then we've got our measly 3.5%. And for us to bicker over the crumbs underneath Bud Miller and Coors tables is ridiculous.
You got to play with aeration, temperatures, and just control your temperature during your fermentation. In the beginning of your fermentation, you create more fusel alcohols than esters. At the end, you don't. You get more esters. So play with it. Don't stuck with one temperature, but start cool, ramp it up in the end, and then that's how you play with your ester profile.
To sanitize means that you've killed a certain percentage of the biologicals, and that usually comes down to like 99.9%. On disinfecting, you're looking at 99.99%. And at sterilizing, you've killed 100%. And usually to properly sterilize equipment, you need to run them through an autoclave.
A lot of people will clean, and then they'll go out and they'll sanitize, and they'll leave their equipment laying around, and then they'll come back and they go, oh, I sanitized that, and then they start to brew. And that's not correct. The best way to always have a clean vessel, a sanitary situation, is to clean first, make sure it's clean, and then just before you're ready to brew, sanitize. The reason being is that you have no idea how long or where the dust, the air as it blows through the buildings or whatnot like that, bacteria will come in, and all of a sudden you're infected just because the air blew.
And at that point I realized, wait a minute, batch sparging is not inherently less efficient than any other type of sparging. Batch sparging is what you make it. I mean, you get the efficiency of your system no matter what, just like with any other system. And at that point I was totally hooked on it because it was, for me, easier and cheaper because I didn't need the extra equipment. I didn't need to set up the extra equipment. The beer was tasting fantastic, and my efficiencies were every bit as good as anything that I'd ever seen from anybody who was fly sparging.
So I put these shells in a little stock pot, a bit too small, and put the water in, and it boiled over, and the water got underneath the cooktop of my, glass top range.
Electric stove.
Yeah, and it went underneath. Fried the whole damn thing out. There were sparks. People were running, screaming off the streets. It was a huge mess, and it cost me right at $250.
Well, there you go.
So,
and now there's a light that stays on, the little red light that always stays on your
the burner on the front left is always hot. It's not always hot, but the light's always there, and so we can threaten small children with that.
And Sam from Vienna, Illinois, or is it Vienna?
It's probably Vienna.
You know you're a home brewer when your wife asks you to mash the potatoes and you start heating strike water.
That's great.
The inclination is to think, well, we haven't had a home brewing statute all this time, and, I just don't think it's going to happen. And the temptation is to be very cynical about the approach. But the reality is, we've seen it. I've seen it before in my own eyes. You help someone understand what home brewing is all about, and by golly, the legislature will say, hey, I've got no reason to vote against this. This is going to make some people happy, and they let it roll.
At the 400 nanometers, the brown glass absorbs everything. There is no emission through brown glass. When I step up to 450 nanometers, again, 100% blocking of that light. And even up to 500 nanometers, I'm about 96-97% attenuating that light passing through. Wow. So a brown bottle is a pretty safe bet.
So how do you pass the time when you're picking or you're cutting meticulously 2,000 dandelion heads?
I don't think I did this, but a person could have some music going, I suppose. You could have your Dandelion Wine playlist all queued up.
Or some nice brewing podcasts.
You could have some nice brewing podcasts. I think I don't know, James. I think I just sang some songs to myself. I don't know. Looked at the people looking at me, wondering, what is this bozo doing out here? Be hired by the park board?
Nice. To me, this would be pretty much a session beer. It's comes across fairly fruity, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I think it is fruity. And I'm curious, you said it was in the bright tank, it was filtered. How long before you would want this served? Because it seems like I'm getting a little bit of green apple, maybe some acetaldehyde in it.
Well, honestly, the credit goes to Basic Brewing, because it would have probably taken me another year to figure out what the hell I was doing wrong, because no one had ever done it. It was so frustrating. I couldn't ask anyone what I was doing wrong, and the video was kind of an idiot-proof way to basically make good beer, and it works.
Okay, enough celebrity endorsement. Enough, because
You're a rock star. You're absolutely a rock star.
When you're talking about turkey fryers and those other devices, typically those are, again, tested and listed for outdoor use only, not indoors. So you are running the risk of generating carbon monoxide and other products of combustion, which may be detrimental to the health of human beings and animals.
All right, we got the boil going, and Jen is out here. You are using a technique that I don't use to avoid the boil over. So what are you doing?
I'm just using a little spray bottle
with water in it, distilled water, and whenever the foam starts getting really high, I just kind of spray it down, and it kind of calms everybody down. So.
And it works. Oh, Andy's getting a little. Yeah. Are you calm, Andy?
I'll stop drinking my maple scotchies.
Most of the really serious home brewers like to go out and research local wineries and pick some grape juice and then do all this analysis and whatnot. And I thought, that's just way too much work. And then I kept talking to myself, they sell wine kits down at the local homebrew shop. Why in the world should I be doing all this hard work when the wine kit people have done this for me?
And so there was buckets inside buckets with holes in them and little recirculating pumps and a whole bunch of different things. And then one guy in particular, Pat Hollingdale, said, hang on a minute, we could do this with a bag. And he just went ahead and built it, and that was it. More or less, it was done from there on, and his first effort worked so well, and he'd thought through it well enough that from there on in, it was more or less the standard process. Everyone went, hang on a minute, that seems to make sense. Let's have a go.
My friends and I, that when we go out and drink, and Vinny's often part of this conversation, when we go to other breweries, we have a scale these days, and it's a delightful scale. It refers to the amount of diacetyl in beers. So when we're sitting at the table, we're able to say this one's delightful, this one's delicious, this one's divine. And we can do it in the context of not really hurting anyone's feelings. So someone can come up to you and say, how do you feel about that beer? And you can say, oh, it's delightful. And that means it has just a little bit of diacetyl in it. And then there's divine, which is, sort of off the charts. So we have a language that we've developed over the years that allows us to speak without hurting anyone's feelings.
If you notice, first of all, there was two factors you didn't get. You didn't get that decoction bite. Right. All right. Even though you use the melanoidin, it doesn't have the almost scorched thing that decoction gives you, all right? And so you had the bite, you had that big full body, and you had a little bit more of an alcohol taste in that one too. So I think all those points are part of the pros, versus the cons when doing a decoction. And thank goodness I was successful.
To me, that's really inspiring to see commercial brewers do these kind of things, and then I scratch my head as a home brewer and say, wait a minute, we can do this. And if anything, we can really even go out there on a whim and do something really radical, and if it doesn't work out, we can brew another beer and blend it back in to balance it out. Or we can say, okay, let's do this and do that with it, and we can still salvage it and not, and if we do have to throw it away, it's only 5 gallons or a 6-pack depending on what we did. So
I would write an article about using this, that, or the other thing in brewing. Somebody would find it and sell it and get it on the market. So it was really fantastic. You'd have somebody coming up and finding these hard to find hops, strange grains that you couldn't get anywhere on the planet except wherever you could find them, and you couldn't find them very often, even when you worked at it. It just went on like that, and it's fantastic.
Different than what is done today, where malting has become a specialized industry, actually separate from the brewing industry almost. The malting process was part of the brewery, and the head brewer was also the head maltster. So they would take the barley, and they would start the malting process, which like today consisted of steeping it, germinating it, drying, and then kilning it.
Now, you're kind of flying in the face of the Reinheitsgebot here. I hope.
Oh, absolutely. There's no rules here. There's no Reinheitsgebot. It's yeah.
The simplest way to make a starter, essentially, is you're going to make some wort. So the easiest way is probably to start with dry malt extract. Add that to a little water, boil it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Basically, you just need to make sure it's sanitary. Throw it in some sort of vessel. I've used plastic milk jugs, a glass wine bottle, anything basically that you can sanitize. And you add the yeast to that and let it ferment out.
And then what do you do? Where do you put it in the beer?
This guy, the Orrin Combs, who was the brewer at San Juan Brewing, he did a sort of
what you might think of as dry porking, I guess. Way to put it. Can we say dry porking on your podcast? He added it in the post fermentation, into either the secondary fermenter or the keg.
So I went on to the internet, and I got on the internet, and lo and behold, discovered that you could use bee pollen as a yeast nutrient.
So you began rounding up bees.
I did. I captured a lot of bees and
rubbed their legs.
Yeah,
they like that.
Well, there was some oohs and ahs, but anyway, some bee pollen, and then one of the recipes said to abuse some raisins.
Is that legal?
I don't know. It was like a Nordic mead site, but it was like abuse raisins.
People, it's funny. Some brewers love to get their beers out and have other people taste them and review them and make notes on them, and a lot of people just want to play their cards really close to their chest and don't, or it's like, I'm not, probably for the same reason that I'm not going to put my adorable young boys into a talent competition or beauty pageant, because as soon as someone says they're not adorable, then I'm going to have problems.
And the other thing I'm thinking about is, I got a little boy and another kid on the way, and sometimes the only time I have the bottle is at like midnight, and I don't have, priming sugar around the house for whatever reason. And so part of the thinking I thought was it's just grabbing kind of whatever you got out of your cupboard to prime with, so you can bottle when you get a chance, may it be at midnight or whenever some of these stores aren't open.
So why couldn't you use just, the decorative rocks around your patio there?
Because they go kapowie.
And why is that? I mean, why wouldn't just any ordinary rock work?
It has to be a hard rock that is not porous, so it can't absorb any water. If you had any water in it and you started heating them up, the pressure and the steam inside would split the rocks. So these are very, very hard, as Dave and I can attest to it, because we had to beat them apart with a sledgehammer.
My girlfriend was actually over in Berlin about 6 months ago, and despite having had Berliner Weiss before, knowing she liked my Berliner Weiss, wanted to try it in Berlin, despite having a German guide who spoke fluent German, they refused to give it to her without the syrup. Despite cajoling, they said, "Oh, you must want a Pilsner, you must want something else." No, I just want the Berliner Weiss without no syrup. And they said, "No, well, that's not something we'll do." Wow.
In the quarters of the period, there's some rather deadly things, including opium and laudanum, and a berry known as faba beana, which was a berry apparently coming from Southeast Asia. It was used there by the natives to knock out fish. They would mash this berry up and they'd throw it in the stream. The fish would all float to the top, and they gather them up. And apparently it had a similar effect on porter drinkers. In fact, the best description is that people drinking it, you could tell because they made a motion like a spaniel quitting water.
Number 4, the one that kind of was muddled, was actually 2 mini marshmallows. Yeah, I had a bag of them, and I went, "Oh, cool!" and put, I guessed at 2 of those. I don't know how you measure out the carbs of an individual mini marshmallow, but I think it was that marshmallow, the caramelized sugar actually coating the tongue.
You see that there's a table that shows IBU measured and calculated with the Tinseth and the Rager methods of calculation are essentially linear. The more hops you add, the more IBUs you get. But it turns out that the measured IBUs in the beers that we made essentially, level off around 50 IBUs.
What's in Chicken Nuts?
It's a very complex imperial stout, Russian imperial stout, probably 30% specialty grains, and from chocolate to roasted barley to black patent to a lot of different dark roasted malts. Ran through or pushed through a Randall with cocoa nibs, Ethiopian coffee, vanilla, and chicory. Right.
Now, what are the benefits of brewing beer on a frozen lake?
None whatsoever. Actually, it's just this psychological idea of that you're sitting on a lake that for the last 10,000 years we've had ducks and geese pooping in it and various animals falling through the ice and decomposing, and you're going to drink that.
And I had to skim the krausen while fermenting a couple of times because I knocked off so much hop debris. It was green on top while fermenting. It was really nasty. And my whole, I was fermenting in my, the whole floor where I was fermenting it smelled of grapefruit. Mm-hmm. I was fermenting it inside a fridge, so kind of smelled like an IPA in my upstairs. It was nice.
At the time, there was only large breweries extant, and there was the Anchor Brewing Company in San Francisco, but that is, a completely different entity from the large breweries. And from what I did is I showed it was possible to actually, build your own brewery, build your own brewing equipment, and start from the ground up a commercial brewery.
Walk past a brewery where they just throw the grain out in a kind of a bin on the side of the road and wait for the farmer to come along and pick it up. And it is that same horrible compost smell almost that is beckoning you to taste it.
Canadians have a different palate. Well, I posted on Facebook and somebody said, I think they said it was somewhere between dumpster and vomit. So
it sounds pretty accurate to me. Yeah, maybe some cheese in there, a little bit of yogurt, maybe some sort of dairy.
All we see today is this enormous avalanche of beers and breweries, but that avalanche started with one snowflake, and that snowflake fell relatively unnoticed.
Hi there. I'm little Jackie Snowflake.
Have you settled on a name?
Yeah, we're going to be calling ourselves Ozark Beer Company. Oh. We wanted to communicate, obviously, a regional feel, and obviously the Hog House, which is now named Hog House, started up as the Ozark Brewing Company. So we figured that a fair number of people who live in this area now have migrated here in the past, 5 to 10 years, and might not really remember that. But we also, like I said, wanted to communicate the local aspect of where we were and, the pride we have for this region and what we like about it.
And ladies and gentlemen, I don't understand why this body, year after year after year, wants to promote alcohol on the people of Alabama. I don't know if you think that the people in your district sent you down here to do that. I don't know if you were campaigning, you had many people come up and say, I want you to go to Montgomery and see if we can get as much alcohol into our neighborhoods, in our families, on our streets, and on our highways as you can do it.
And to make a long story short, basically around 3 in the morning, I needed to call an ambulance to take me in to a hospital that's about a mile from my house. And I just knew, something was wrong.
I mean, I know it's easy to say because larger equipment is more expensive, of course, and there are an awful lot of people who are just trying to get started any way they can. But I think there's a lot to be said for making 4 or 5 times as much beer with a day's labor than the people who just turn out a keg at a time.
So you take 5 pounds, let's just say 5 pounds of honey, and put it in your pot and turn on the burner, and it will start caramelizing that honey, and it'll start really frothing up and boiling over. It's quite exciting, and then eventually it drops down into a soup of some sort. It's inverting the sugars, and burning them, and there's lots of carbon. I'm not quite sure, but it's quite interesting to watch. And then eventually puffs of black smoke start emitting from the bubbles.
Then you know who the Pope is.
Right.
So if you are drinking 700 milliliters of beer a day, which is approximately 2 beers a day, you're going to get exposed to 0.175 milligrams of iodine per day from that beer. And looking at exposure of 0.175 milligrams per day, that's fourfold lower than the concentration that the dose that ATSDR, that branch of the CDC, says is safe for chronic exposure to iodine.
That was the big switch in my mead making, was when I went, well, I say that the big switch was 2 big switches, was when I went from boiling to not boiling, and when I went from not using nutrient to using nutrient. Once I had done that and started adding the nutrient, my meads went from pretty much average to good to really good.
So yeah, we should point out that it is actually illegal here, so maybe that might be a part of the reason why some people don't want to.
Well, it's only illegal if you manage to miss the 2.20.
Well, yeah, we can make it up to 2.25% ABV. So obviously nobody ever brews anything above 2.25%,
except when we make mistakes.
Well, sometimes it's
Anyway, the brewer at Cantillon. I met him before, and I was really surprised that he remembered us. And immediately when we got there, he said, "Oh, you have to taste my wort." And I'm like, "Okay." And I've had a lot of sweet substances and sort of syrupy stuff, and then that would be fun. It was unbelievable to me. It was like cream of wheat. There was so much starch, and I was so shocked by that. And so then I'm like, okay. I'm definitely got to keep working on the spaghetti thing.
Yeah, the pulley definitely. I mean, I didn't have a pulley for the first 2 years, and I was sometimes doing double batches, and especially if you've got a very, very fine bag, that can be pretty tiring. If you've got a less coarse bag, then it's not too bad. But certainly the pulley, I can't imagine going back to the old days of, I nearly do double batches on every one, but I love the pulley. Can't beat it.
Yeah, my next step is to take the pulley and hook it up to the garage door opener. So when I open and close the garage door, it pulls the bag out of the ton there.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, that's genius.
And the light goes on too. So
with open fermentation, basically it works by a couple of things. It works by the fact that our yeast strain forms a thick krausen on the top of the beer. Even if the beer is at 38 degrees Fahrenheit, even after that yeast has been pulled down out of solution, you've still got a very stubborn, thick head of krausen protecting the beer from anything outside. Additionally, with an open-top fermenter, you've always got pretty much CO2 evolving out, and CO2 is toxic to pretty much everything.
In the secondary, I put, I think it was 3 pounds of bananas, and I'd gone to the store and I bought bananas, and I let them sit, and they were on the verge of attracting fruit flies and leaking. I mean, these are really good, ripe bananas, like you'd make banana bread with. So they had a lot of natural sweetness, but mostly I was looking for that aromatics.
Again, I would always say, try it first, try a little bit. If you really do have diagnosed celiac disease, can I guarantee it's going to not cause a reaction for everyone? No. But I think for probably a large majority of the people with celiac disease, this is a solution to those not so great tasting gluten-free beers.
It's kind of overdue for food world educators to not just embrace beer because they're drinking it, they're enjoying it, they're talking about it, but own it, know how to teach it. And I am after even just more than this progress that we're seeing, but an equalization of beer education compared to wine.
But if you taste a British real ale, something which is, perhaps 3.5% or up to 5%, something like a Best Bitter or even a porter, for me personally, I think that does taste better served on cask. We're not saying that the innovations in craft beer that are happening elsewhere in the market are bad. What we're saying is that, we're here to hold on to this bit.
And Mother Nature helps you hit your strike water temperature, right? Because it's comes out of the ground at about 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 C.
Yeah, we hit. It's in time of year. It certainly depends. Certainly helps. But when I fill up my my kettle to heat or strike water, about 303 gallons. It ends up about 142, maybe 138. So yeah, that definitely is helping.
And you use is it an umlaut? Is that what that thing is?
I like the umlaut. I like the smiley face look. I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but yeah.
It makes you metal if you use the umlaut thing over your U.
Right.
When you said PP Pilsner, I immediately went to Poo Poo Porter and.
Now wait a minute.
We could go on forever, but I think my favorite is IPA.
Now, I gotta tell
we get a lot of traction out of that one.
You will have a lot of traction.
So much for that.
We're taking the trolley downtown. All right, calm down.
Okay.
They can't know that we've been drinking beer.
They won't know.
All right, Doug.
My mom's coming.
And that is the story of how my maggot beer was born.
I'm glad we ended there.
I told him you should add honey to it. You know what you'd have?
No, what?
A maggot braggot.
Maggot braggot. On that happy note.
What a trip, eh? Many, many, many thanks to everybody who's taken part in the show for now 507 episodes. And many thanks to you for listening and participating in the many ways that you do. I'm looking forward to seeing where the next 500 episodes will take us. 500 episodes? Can I be doing this when I'm 60 years old? Future listeners will know, of course. Future listeners, the archives. And, of course, I'm setting us up for some sort of ironic karma stuff. Let's just try to get to next week, shall we? To show 508. Let's see how it goes after show 508. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. Please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. You can get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo. And you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can find our log books where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all of that out at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Featured products this week that were purchased through the link are The Answer is in Your Blood Type. That's the more obscure Bob Dylan song. And Tool Wizard Grill Brush. 1 brush and 2 scrubbers. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.